Well, that was quite the harvest. Hi there, this is Big Spruce Rabbitry, and last night we had our first real killer frost of the year. So, normally I would put plastic over all of my squash once those first killer frosts come to give them a little bit of extra lifetime. Well, last night it said it was going to be in the 40s. I've actually been covering the plants in plastic the last few nights without frost, so I thought I was pretty safe in giving it another few days before putting plastic over the plants again. Well, turns out I wasn't, and now I have to go around and harvest all the winter squash pretty quick, and there's a little bit of frost damage on some of my fruits. So, I hope you get to enjoy seeing our harvest. This is one of our spaghetti squashes. It has some frost damage right here. It's going to lower its shelf life, so we'll have to eat this guy fast, but we will go get this harvested, and it is still edible. Unfortunately, the leaves on these squash plants are all a bit crispy, but the squash down here haven't been hurt, so these ones aren't frost damaged. I'm just going to get them off the plant. It's a big one. A little dirty, but vegetable. There's the robin's bathroom. That's a monster. Frost damage along the veins there, but as the morning has progressed, the squash plants are slowly dying, so time to feed them to the bunnies. squash. Well, I've ripped out all of the squash from the main garden bed and have fed them to the bunnies. This is the pile of winter squash that we got from our garden. We estimate that it weighs about 120 pounds, and if we were to buy this at the market, it would probably be $350 worth of squash, which is awesome. Now, a number of the squash are a little underripe. Fairbanks has had a cold, short season, and colder and wetter than normal, so it's not great, but we can ripen the squash the best we can in the greenhouse, and hopefully we'll be able to eat a lot of squash this winter, and the ones that are underripe or that are frost damaged because of the frost that was unexpected can be eaten very soon and it won't actually matter. So I gotta get these guys cleaned and sorted and figured out which ones I'm going to try to ripen and which ones we have to eat like in the next couple of days. So, I'm very happy. How do you tell a winter squash is ripe? You can tell a winter squash is ripe by looking at the skin of the squash. The skin shouldn't be still shiny and should be kind of dull and fully colored. If the squash is not fully colored and still has some green on it, it's not ripe, and it's also going to be a little bit more shiny. Now, here in Fairbanks, you have to often harvest squash before they are fully ripe. When you harvest winter squash, you should leave a long stem on them. You can actually tell how ripe a squash is by the color of its stem. If the stem's still green, the squash isn't fully ripe. Now, here in Fairbanks, nearly all of my squash still have green stems, but this is pretty unavoidable because of how early our frosts come. So, that's just the way it is, and you can ripen them in a greenhouse, and it works. See, before I put this underripe squash in my greenhouse, I'm going to clean it off. This helps the skin develop and also helps it ripen. Hopefully it'll work. Don't know. It'll still be good for soup even if it doesn't fully ripen. A fully ripe squash like this one should be cured. That means left on a shelf for a couple of weeks in the sun where the skin can fully develop into a thick shell. And that will make the squash last for months and months. I've had spaghetti squash last for up to 2 years with that particular treatment, but normally you want to get it eaten within about 6 months. It depends on the variety of squash though, so let's go see what types of squash I got. This is my pride and joy, a turban squash. This is a New England pie pumpkin. It is one of my favorite varieties to grow and gets this nice sheen on the outside of it when it's ripe. This squash was very close to being ripe, and I think it will be really, really good once I cook it. This is a spaghetti squash. Squash plants can hybridize with other types of squash, and most of my spaghetti squashes I save seeds from, so a lot of them look like hybrids with other things. I think this one hybridized with a pumpkin. This squash here is a hybrid between a spaghetti squash and a butternut squash. You can kind of tell that because it has the color of a butternut squash but the shape of a spaghetti squash. This is an orange Hubbard squash. It's a little underripe because you can see a little bit of a sheen to it and it's not fully orange yet. But with a couple of weeks in the greenhouse, it should ripen into a really, really nice meal. This is a Kabuka squash, and really the only Kabuka squash I raised this year that looks like a Kabuka squash due to hybridizing, but it should be tasty. It's a little underripe because the skin should be a very dark green at this point, but it's still kind of light colored, but it should still be able to ripen in the greenhouse. These squash are the rejects. Many of them were too small, too frost damaged, or even cracked, so need to be used today. So I'll be eating a lot of squash in the next day or so to try to get these ones used up. Unfortunately, these two little spaghetti squash have had severe frost damage and are going to need to be eaten very quickly in the next couple of days, or else they'll probably rot. So we'll get these guys eaten. It's not going to actually affect the flavor of the squash too much, it's just the way it is. Let's take a look in the greenhouse to see the squash curing. Well, that was quite the harvest of winter squash. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and check out our farm store in the description.